Yes, sir.
Quick question.
Name, please.
If I,
Name, please.
Mike Sorrentino, if I put an addition up that doesn't require a permit,
Correct.
does that mean that I don't have to build it to state codes?
If
I can
you're,
put it up any way I want,
if you're building it yourself, you can build it.
even though it's not gonna be safe.
This issue about state codes, I don't want to really get, I don't want to
Okay.
put you off, you know, that's totally, that was recently passed by the state, and I have no idea how that's going to be implemented, but as far as, you know, it's like you can wire your own house now. So I don't know whether you're going to have to meet state codes or not.
You have to meet state codes, but you can wire your own house.
But that has nothing to do with this ordinance.
Okay.
The 24-month issue, John Stewart again. 24 months I have. Can I live in my camper while I'm doing this 24 months?
There's a section, we'll get to that,
That says only 180 days
Yep.
and stuff, so can I live in my camper while I wait the
you
24
can get a
months?
temporary permit, we'll put that, we'll get to that part of the loan. All right, we're all done with Article 4. Anything else on Article 4?
Yeah, the violation section.
Okay.
They're kind of vague.
Basically, what it says is that, you know, that if the code enforcement finds a violation, this is the way the process works. Code enforcement is informed of violation, he checks it out, it comes to the selectmen. We're the ones that tell him to go forth and seek enforcement of the action.
Okay, so, John Stewart again, the question is, and right now, as you said last meeting, we have a family in town that's being sued by the town, the Nightingales, I
They're
believe?
not being sued, their legal action is being taken against them.
So what would be the penalty to them for cutting down their trees? Would they have to replace the trees? Is there a monetary fine? How do we know what violation, I mean, if I change the size of my steps, is it gonna cost me $1,000, $500? Do I have to move the steps?
If you don't.
That's a fairly pertinent question, I think, to anybody in here who has to comply with the law.
The law says it can be up to $100 a day. That's what the state law says. Now, whether or not the town charges that, or whatever, then there are several options, whether we do consent decrees, or we end up in court, all that. The law says it can be up to $100 a day. That's what the penalty can be. Bob,
But first, you
this
tell
is
them they
this
get.
Bob Temple, the CEO.
Bob Temple, CEO. First, you tell them what the problem is, and you order them to fix it before you even go there. And then you try to get the thing resolved that way. The idea isn't to go through this. This is only the last resort.
Should, but still, it's an important.
Yeah, no,
Last resort.
but I mean, the process is you write them a letter explaining to them what provisions of the ordinance they violated, what the penalties are, what you want them to do, specifically tell them that. And hopefully that 99% of the time, that's what, it gets resolved right there, and never even gets to them.
Well, there you go. Okay, we're done with, and this is now, each of these districts is now set up in a way that it talks about 3 categories. Uses by right. In other words, that's what you can do if you're in that district, what you can always do without a permit. Uses which require a CEO permit, and uses which require a code enforcement officer, and uses which require a planning board review. It spells it right out. So it will always tell you what you can do without a permit. The Resource Protection District, you can look down through that we kind of talked about that earlier. If you've got stuff going on in a Resource Protection District prior to, as Bud asked, prior to 1988, prior to 2010, and if this is enacted, you can continue to do that. Nothing changes. Yes, ma'am. Name,
By
please.
saying, my name is Patricia Egan, by saying you can continue to do it, does that mean that if you sell your property, the person after you can't?
All of these things use the term run with the land. If you sell your property, that runs with the land. So whatever that grandfather activity was then, continues to run with the future property.
Cynthia Rosen, when you say grandfather, how much time are you allowed to not do something that you were doing before you're not grandfathered anymore?
2 years.
Okay, so if I got one sick, if last year's rainy season made it so I couldn't put the produce stand at the end of my driveway that I do every year, right? Just as an example, because it doesn't fit in this one, but it's the grandfather pot. And then say this year I end up back in the hospital with the Crohn's disease thing and I'm out of commission and our gardens don't work, then next year I now have to ask permission to sell food off my property.
No, you don't, no.
That's 2
In that
years.
specific instance, no, because you don't need a permit to sell food off the
Yes, you
property.
do.
land.
Yeah, you do.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
Not if you're a farmer, you don't. You're wrong.
Okay,
We'll get there, we'll get to that piece.
okay, anything else in that resource protection district?
So, wait, so what you're saying is those 2 years, that break of 2 years, number one is in here defined somewhere as 2 years?
I think it's in there somewhere, yes.
Okay, that's good, but then that 2-year time off is going to be, the exception to it is gonna be determined
No,
by
I
who's
take that
reviewed?
back. The 2 years only has to do with non-conformance, doesn't it? That only has to do with non-conformance.
So how long,
Because it does run with the land. There is no,
the business, so I could stop for a few years
yeah,
and then
stop
do
and
it
take it
again
back out.
because I once
That's correct.
did
It's
it?
only, the 2 years has to do with non-conformance. If you stop an activity that's non-conforming for 2 years, then it goes away.
So just for clarity there, if somebody is plowing a field that is in one of these districts today, stops plowing that field, sells their land, the new owner doesn't do it for the next year or the next year, but decides to plow the field then, he's okay?
As far as I'm concerned, it runs with the land. I'm not an attorney. As far as I'm concerned, it runs with the land. I'm not an attorney to answer that question. Our
Okay.
interpretation, it runs with the land.
And John Stewart, again, I do have another thing on this one. You asked if we had any more. Yes, Article 6, prohibited uses. That's section E, or paragraph 1. Uses not otherwise permitted.
What page?
That's on page 18.
We didn't get there yet.
That's Article 6. You just said, are we done with Article 6?
We're just both done with this section.
So are we there yet or not?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so use is not otherwise permitted. So if somebody in their wisdom hasn't come up with a use that I can do by right, I can't do it,
That's correct.
because you didn't give me permission now to do it. What rights they have not written for you today, you do not have.
Are you making a speech or are you asking a question?
Both.
You're
not supposed to do that.
We'll have one more question from this gentleman here, and then Don, please continue. Let's state your name.
Andrew Thompson. My question is, it goes with land, if it historically had been farmland, then can you, even though it may have been abandoned for 50 years, if it's still in that resource protection, can you then turn it back to farm?
I think if that was historic, it was farmland, there are all kinds of variables out there, but I would think that was farmland. Nobody's gonna prevent people from farming in this town. That's not the intent. If you wanted to go in there's Merrill Hutchins sits in the back, he had a piece of property way down in the woods back there a few years ago that he cleared and made a field. Are we gonna stop Merrill Hutchins from farming that field or from clearing land? No, that's not the intent. Tom Johnson's done the same up there, nothing's gonna change. What was pasture land 150 years ago?
Can I clarify some of that? Forestry came in and said, you're too close to the resource protection area, you can only cut so much and you can't, unless you file a change of use with the state, you can't do it. You can if you file a change of use and jump through their hoops. But that's the state, not about the town, that's the state.
Was not, that's correct, but essentially, that's because you were close to the resource protection. But had you had another field out there or an old pasture that had grown out, you can cut that off, bulldoze it over, and put it back in.
But we were talking about resource protection zone. That zone, you said we could do things in if we had been doing them before. And now you're saying, well, no, if you're close to the resource protection, you can't. Is it yes or is it no? Again, this is the law that we have to live under. I think it should be understandable for the average person.
Dave Martucci. I think there's a confusion here in some people's minds. And what Tommy was talking about had nothing to do with the town. town has no regulation on what he does back there. There may be state rules, I think you'll find occasionally in this ordinance, it says there may be state or even federal rules that apply. We have nothing to do with those, nothing. Those are there whether we like them or not. But the town has made it clear, I think, over the years, that farming is a good occupation and forestry is a good occupation. And we have tried very hard to be sure that those rules in this revised ordinance are even easier now than they were before.